Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today, as you can see on the screen, we're going to discuss adding attachments to a database, an Access database, because this seems to be an issue that so many people have a problem with. And, to make things worse, Microsoft, in their typical manner, managed to muddy the waters substantially when they came out with Office 2007 and later with their attachment data types. So let's just discuss very briefly, what are we talking about when we talk about an attachment? Well, an attachment can literally be any file, okay? It can be you have a profile, a record for your employee, you want to attach an image. You could do some type of record management database and you've got Excel and Word documents. It could be something that you're logging email, so you could have MSGs or EML files. You could have PDFs, you could have text data files, you could have engineering files, XML. It doesn't make a difference what it is. So an attachment is just a file, any electronic file that you want to store as part of a record. Now, where does the problem lie? Well, the problem lies, in twofold, but mainly because whenever you add anything to a database, you're making that file, that database, grow in size. And if we're talking about an Access backend, well, then we know that we have a limit, a hard limit of 2 gigabytes for that file. It can never go above 2 gigabytes or else the file will corrupt and be garbage. So it becomes important that we don't, quote unquote, overstuff our database with all sorts of useless junk and whatnot. And in my mind, and in many people's minds, that's where attachments fall into the category of junk, and you don't want to be just needlessly putting it into your database. You want to store data, raw data, text data, and that will keep your database to a minimal size, and then you never have to worry about that 2 gigabyte limit. There is perhaps one exception to what we're going to discuss here in a more broad sense, and that is attachments of, graphical interface elements. So let's say images for icons on your buttons for your database forms. Small little elements like that, you may choose to still use the data attachment data type, but even then, personally, I don't even do that. Because they're minimal in size, you can get away with it. I still don't like the interface that Microsoft offers for managing attachments, for managing multi-value fields. I think they're very, very poorly done, and I just prefer to do it the way I'm about to show you, the approach I show you, which is the approach that has been around since Access came out. So basically, this entire discussion today is just telling you, use the old, tried, tested, and true technique, which is save your file wherever you want on your computer system, on your network, and save that path alone. So we're not taking the file and trying to jam it into our database. All we're going to do is save the location and the file name of the file. Now, there are 2 versions of this, and it all depends on your specific case. Now, if you're at home, a single user, single PC, well, then you can just pull your file path wherever it may lay today. So, my documents, it could be your downloads, wherever. Now, if we're in a more corporate environment, and in this case, we have users trying to access files everywhere. If I go and use the path for Daniel's documents, well, when John goes into the system and tries to access Daniel's documents, he's not going to get it because he doesn't have access to my computer and my user folders. So in that type of scenario, in a corporate environment, when the person selects the file that they want to link to a record, then we have to add one extra step. And that is, we're going to copy the file they selected wherever it may lay, and we're going to make a copy of that onto a central network location that we will have predetermined and created. That way, now when we copy it and we place it on the server, and that's the path we're going to link in our database, now John, David, Daniel, Isabel, everyone has access to that network location. Therefore, everyone has access to any file any other user uploads. So, enough talk. Let's just dive into this. This really is simple because I presented much of this previously when I talked about, let's say, the file dialog, the Office file dialog. You can go through the article if you want. The highlight here is just simply you have the demo. Just download it. Everything you need is there. And that's what we're going to just very briefly explore. So like I say here, I've got the demo. And it offers two methods. So you've got method 1 and you've got method 2. So like I said, method 1 would be for a single user at home, let's say, or if you're in an environment at work where you're the only person that uses a database, then you could use method 1. If you're in a shared network environment, multi-user, then you're going to want method 2. So let's just look at how it operates. Let me bring this into your field of view for a second. And it really is this simple. We're going to go pick the file to add, to link to our database. It can be any file. It makes no difference. Let's add that in. There you go. What has it done? All it has added is added a string that represents the path in the file that I wanted to link. And then at any time, like I said, you can add functionality to view files. You can do whatever you need beyond that, jazz things up. Then to delete it, it's just deleting a text entry from the table. So if we look over here and close it and we open it up, all it did was add a single string. So there is no attachment data type here. As you see, it's a short text. That's it. If we go and look at method 2, it's going to look very similar. Now we're going to come pick a file, the same thing. And there you go, the file string, the path and file name have been added. And you can delete it and all of the same jazz. And if we look at that table, you'll see it is just a string once again, just a short text. So very simple. We're not adding attachments. We're storing the location of the file. Oh, one thing I should point out. The first one, like you saw, was C users Daniel desktop. The second one, I didn't pay attention to show you, but it took it from the desktop and copied it into the location that I had pre-set up in my VBA code, which is a subfolder of the location of the backend, which typically is how I set things up when I'm at a client. Unless they have a really well-structured system and they tell me this is where we want it, a lot of times I just use a subfolder of the location of the backend, so everything's organized neatly. So let's just very briefly look at the code behind all of this. If we go into design view, how am I doing this? Let's look at the command button that does basically everything. And what I'm doing is I'm using my browse, which is the file dialog. I grab its value, and as long as I've been passed back an actual file, then I push that to my control. That stores the short text. For those of you that aren't familiar, this is an old version of this function. There's a much newer version on my website. Nevertheless, the principle remains always the same. This is using the application file dialog, which pops open the dialog to allow me to go pick a file. And then you can add filters if you wanted. In my case, I'm not. Okay, there's no filters. I'm doing all files. But you could apply filters and say, I only want PDFs, I only want Excel, I only want this. You can have several different types. I only want documents, Excel, and I don't know, messages. So you can apply filters to the application file dialog. There's no issue there. And for instance, here is an example of how that is done. As you see here, instead of the all files ***, you can do whatever you want, and you can write whatever you want as the prompt. But basically, yeah, we go through it, we apply filters if there are any, and we just go in display. That's what this show does. It displays the dialog to the user, and everything else is handled behind the scenes by the Windows Office dialog. So all we have to do is do that initial setup for the call, and after that, everything's taken care of, and it will pass back what the user selected. You get into the newer version on my website, it even allows multi-select if ever that's something that you want to look into. So that's the local one. Now, if we jump over to the server version, so multi-user, well, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to do the fbrowse. We're going to allow the user to go select that file. We're going to make sure that they actually selected a file, didn't cancel out or something. And now we're going to have to go and do that copy. So what we're going to do is we're going to go, and I'm going to here find the path on my backend. So I'm just using a table, a linked table, and I use it to determine with the connection string the backend location. Then I have my attachment folder name. Sorry, it's not there. It's in my module. So in this database, all the attachments go into a subfolder called attachments. It could be whatever you want. You could even set this up in a table, so then it can be configured through a menu or something like that, and then just read at runtime, DLOOKUP, or some other variant of that nature. So it goes and gets the location of the backend, and it tacks on this folder, subfolder where attachments go. And then we're just going to make sure the folder exists, because if it doesn't, we're going to create it. And then we just do a file copy. So we're going to copy the file the user selected, right? And we're going to pass it over to the location of the folder plus the file name, the original file name. We could also, if there's a need, rename the file at this point. Instead of using the get file name, we could have some other means. Could be the record number. It could be you have some naming convention that you're going to apply using some function. So we just change and alter that, obviously. And then as long as everything worked successfully, then we pass that back to our form control. Then it stores in memory the server folder and file names. That's it. So they both are based on that browse, that file office dialog, but then here we have that extra step of determining the proper folder location and then copying it there first. That's it. That's how hard it is to manage properly attachments in any Access database. This will reduce, if not eliminate, bloating completely, and will, it helps with performance, overall performance. If you allow your databases to grow substantially instead of staying minute, well, whenever you're transferring this data back and forth, it hits your network hard, can cause slowdowns. You obviously risk the potential also of hitting that 2 gigabyte file limit, which can cause corruption, and then you're really up a creek without a paddle. So truly, this is the way to do things. This is the tried, tested, and true since Access came out. I highly, highly recommend you use this approach, and don't even think twice about using the attachment data type. That is something that will simply get you into trouble over the long run. I hope this has been informative and helps a few of you out there. And per the usual, have a great day, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care, everyone.